Hi, and welcome back. I'm going to introduce Oona here because I think she needs an introduction. I have had the privilege of working with her for the last 2 years, it feels like. I've had the privilege of working with her through some pretty crazy times, and she is a strong and intense advocate for harm reduction, and she is a strong and intense saver of lives. And I am honored to work with her every day. And not very many people can keep up with us, and she does. So I am super appreciative to have her on my team, and to see all of the things that she's doing technology-wise, and everything that she's done with Brave, and everything that she's doing in the States, and all of those things are just so amazing. And I have never met anybody with such a mind for harm reduction as she seems to have. So thank you for having me, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Rebecca. All right. With that being said, it's now my turn in the spotlight. I just want to take a moment to think about who isn't here, the people who aren't able to make it to the table because they did not survive the drug war, they did not survive the structural and systemic violence, they did not survive recognize that for those of us that do make it to the table, to having a voice, to having influence, to having ideas, to trying to make leaps and bounds in public health and in policy, that I carry those who are not with us. I also want to give a massive shout out to Dana Fletham, who has put the entire Hop-In platform together, and the immense amount of work to get this organized, to get us connected, to bring my vision to the table has been astronomical. And I think we should add on her title, the Herder of Oona, as well, because she has helped keep me on task. And this would not be possible without Dana going above and beyond and working in, working ridiculous hours trying to make sure that this is somewhat smooth, and that we're able to have our connection day to day. So Dana, my hands are up to you, and thank you so much. So I was going to do a presentation about Brave tools, Brave products, but honestly, you can get all of that information in the expo. I wanted to instead talk about less suffering, and why should we have a knowledge exchange and a symposium that is trying to create some sort of flux in between the US and Canada, that is trying to get harm reductionists to get to the table together and feel like we are getting to witness the joy of the successes of people's programs, is because we are in a time of such intense dislocation. And we are in a time of such intense suffering, and it is imperative that we see the hope and the value and encourage people to continue doing the work that they're doing inside of such incredible social isolation. And we know that the heart of harm reduction is connection. We know that the heart of harm reduction is love and mutuality, and a deep, deep respect for being human. And we also know that social isolation and dislocation are the drivers for fatality, for violence. And so if we can connect through whatever means that it is that through whatever means necessary, I've seen so many amazing examples of people connecting through whatever means necessary to provide harm reduction, to provide human moments. We've seen mutual aid, folks, we've talked about mutuality. We've seen a redistribution of resources. We see folks who are willing to go to jail to provide less death and less suffering to their community members, because we are absolutely fucking sick of turning on Facebook and hearing the loss of another person, walking down the street and noticing another person is gone. So, you know, harm reduction itself is a little bit of a misnomer. People, the boilerplate answer is like, what is harm reduction? It's, yes, it's meeting people where you're at. And 100%, you know, harm reduction is meeting people where they're at, but the institution of harm reduction came from trying to divert poor people and drug users from the emergency services model. So that is how it got public will. So consequently, it is really difficult to fund harm reduction, because harm reduction in itself is a point of connection that is going to create a near miss situation, which you can't qualify or quantify. And what I mean by that is, you know, we don't know what the difference that a cigarette makes, a hamburger, a hug, a call to our friends. We don't know the difference, what that makes. What does connection make? How do we use epidemiology to say, well, actually people didn't die because they were connected to a friend, and that one moment when they really needed someone to meet them where they were at, they got it. So we don't have any evidence to show that harm reduction works. And I have like a little story, and I like how I learned how I wanted to practice harm reduction, what I thought that the heart of harm reduction was. I was walking down Hastings Street, which is in the downtown east side in Vancouver. And I was coming from the Drug Users Resource Center, which is a place that I loved working at, a place of yeses, which is another story. And I saw this woman, and it's rush hour, and it's raining. And I saw this woman, and she's roaring, like primal roar. And when I located where the sound was coming from, this woman was walking down the middle of the street during rush hour with bare feet and barely any clothes, obviously in distress, obviously having a real rough day, but also like the most visible person. And I took a beat, because I was like, how do I get her out of the middle of the road? And the cars are going by, and they're made out of hard metal, and there's filled with impatient people who she is disrupting their flow from getting home. And she is just determined to walk down the middle of the street, her soft body versus these impatient cars. And as I like take a second to try to strategize what it is I'm going to do, this dude, older gentleman, flies by on a BMX, and he sees her, hears her roaring, turns around, and I was like, oh no, what's going to happen? And he shouts above the traffic at her. He's like, hey, you. And she goes, fuck off, you stupid pedophile, stupid fuck you, fuck you. And like so big and so loud. And I was like, ooh, I wonder what he's going to do to that. And he's like, oh, sweetheart. And of course, that makes me cringe. Oh, sweetheart, you know, it's such a beautiful day. I'd hate to see a dame like yourself get squished in the middle of the street. And I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And she's swearing at him, but she's slowed down, and she's no longer walking, and they're interacting. And he fishes around in his back pocket, and he pulls out this crumpled pack of cigarettes, and he like waves it around, and he's like, do you want a cigarette? And she pauses, and she waits for a car to go by, and then swerves to the left and walks to the side of the road. She's not on the sidewalk. He's on the sidewalk. She's on the side of the road. The buses are still swerving around her and honking, and she does not give a shit. She is exactly where she is. And he hands her a cigarette. He lights it for her. I can no longer hear what it is that they're saying. They talk for maybe 5 to 10 seconds. Their interaction was maybe 1 minute at length. He hands her the pack of cigarettes and the lighter. She tucks them into her undershirt, as one does when you don't have pockets, and he toodles off down the road. And she does this miraculous thing. She steps onto the sidewalk, and I'm so relieved. And I'm just watching this all play out. I'm observing humanity. I'm observing harm reduction, the heart of harm reduction, the zeitgeist of what harm reduction is. A person saw a person in distress, found a need that needed to be met. That person who was in distress moved themselves into a safer and safer and safer environment until finally they were actually walking on the sidewalk. And that woman walked down the sidewalk, and I don't know if where she was going, it was more intense and more, if it was more dangerous or not. But in that moment, she was seen as being human. She was engaged with as a human being, and she reacted appropriately to that engagement. It was amazing. It was amazing to me. What the difference that a cigarette makes. It's not like he tone policed her, like, I didn't like the way that you talked to me, so I'm no longer going to give you this cigarette. Like, he was just harm reduction in motion. And because there's no incident report, because there's no hospitalization, because there is no quantifiable miss or quantifiable issue that happened, it is now a near miss. And when we, what I saw was qualifying the near misses. It highlighted the emotional labor of what being human is, of what harm reduction is. And I get asked all the time in all the systems work that I do, where's the evidence that it works? And it drives me insane. It's like, I see it every single day when a person is treated like a human being who is in distress and needs some support and resources, who is able to be connected to networks, who is able to make a phone call and hear a voice on the other end. I see every single day the evidence of what less suffering looks like. And, we can take insight, for example. So for those of you who are struggling, trying to come up with outcomes and measurements for your programs, for the different things that you're doing, it's like this need to prove what it is that you're doing is a whole other level of exhausting. People who use drugs have looked out for each other and kept each other safe since way before government authority began funding innovations like supervised consumption sites or syringe exchanges or mat care or housing. And the pandemic has increased the disparity of resources across the way. And we'll take insight, for example. So against all odds and in acts of extreme courage, and community love, drug users and service providers fought in a federal battle for an exemption to Health Canada to run a insight, which is the first sanctioned supervised consumption. FYI, before that, they were running it illegally. It was an illegal operation. And since its inception in 2003, there's been over 3.6 million visits and reversed almost 7,000 overdoses. And the harm reduction community waited 2003. This is when, how long ago was that? 2020, just 19 years ago. And the harm reduction community waited with bated breath for the political uptake of the supervised consumption model, which had such intense efficacy, so much research. It's the most researched harm reduction thing in the universe, like there are thousands of peer-reviewed papers on the efficacy of the supervised consumption. So we waited, and to this day, there are no exempt or acting sanctioned sites in the US. To this day, the ones that we do have in other places in Canada outside of Vancouver, and the Vancouver model are precarious at best. They open, they close, they have funding, they don't have funding. And yet it showed all the evidence, and it continued to show all the evidence. The crosstown traffic, the Vitus, the Salome projects, the Naomi projects, well-funded, well-researched, beautiful projects that show that when people have access to things like safe supply of drugs, a regular drug supply, it reduces criminalization, it reduces recidivism, it reduces the burden on the healthcare system. But despite that, we're still struggling 20 years later to get this methodology into the public body. My point is, at the end of the day, will people, when given technological means to connect and utilize community supports, because everything that we are doing today has started as a result of drug users trying to take care of themselves. And if people are given a technological means to connect and utilize those same supports, can we change, can we move the needle on overdose fatalities? So if we know the when and the where using virtual means of an overdose, are communities willing and able to respond to themselves and in no uncertain circumstances? Does anyone want their friends and family to die, right? So where was I going with this? Oh, it's so good. Okay. If the future is community-based response, if I can go on the phone and get a Tinder date within 2 minutes of landing in some unknown glorious place, why can't I go on and know that there's a community? Like, why can't I go on a platform and know that there's a community member who would be willing to come if I was overdosing? Like, where our social life prioritizes what is realistic and what isn't. How many millions of dollars went into the Tinder platform or the Uber Eats platform or Uber at large? So why is there that disparity? We do know that I know that community-based response is how we will be, community members will be the arbiter of less suffering. I see it every single day. I see it in the way that we connect with each other, that we hold space for each other, that we collaborate together, that we are motivated for the same reasons, which is to use whatever means necessary to provide connection inside of a system that is hell-bent on killing the people that we love. So, so that's why we're all here today, to adapt, to collaborate, to hold space for each other, to learn what other people are doing in amazing places, and to learn how we might be able to work better in the future. And with that, I've lost the plot. I have lost the plot from my own presentation. I'm so happy that you are all here. I'm so grateful to see all of the amazing work that people are doing. I look forward to the emails and Twitter posts, social media posts. I look forward to connecting with new friends that don't know that they love me yet. And I look forward to us moving the needle on overdose fatalities together. And I am so proud and heartened to be here with you today. So thank you for all of that.